Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Paul Hinton from the Nelson Rotary Club. I hope you enjoyed the preceding tape on Polio Plus. With me tonight is Jim Gouk from the Castlegar Rotary Club. Jim is the West Kootenays Area Coordinator for Polio Plus, and Ken Muth from the Nelson Rotary Club. Jim, could you start to explain to us about the Rotary International's Polio Plus program, please?
Certainly. Rotary International became involved in a polio project in the Philippines first in 1979. It was not part of the actual Polio Plus program at that time. They had such good success in immunizing against polio in the Philippines that they decided to make it a much larger project. At that time, they got together with the World Health Organization and UNICEF and started a program which has now become known as Polio Plus. Rotary's part in this program is to provide vaccine for the immunization of all the children in the world against polio. The plus part includes 5 other vaccine-preventable diseases, which is part of the overall World Health Organization's program. Total cost of the polio vaccine is estimated at $120 million US dollars. It's quite an expensive project. It's certainly the most expensive and greatest project that Rotary has ever undertaken. And in order to raise this kind of money, they are going for the first time ever outside of Rotary's own membership. A great deal of the money is going to come from within Rotary, but much of it is coming from without as well. Now, to date, they have raised $108 million. They're actually looking, though, to have the final wrap-up of this in terms of the fundraising by May 24th of this year. And what they're hoping at that time is to surpass the $120 million mark in either cash that's been collected or pledges that have been made primarily through Rotary Clubs or other donors who pledge to give a certain amount within a 3 to 5 year period.
What's the present status? How much money has been collected to date?
Well, $108 million to date is the last figure that I've heard. That's very recent.
Mm-hmm. Ken, I understand you've had some personal experience in treating polio victims?
Well, Paul, as a medical practitioner here in Canada, I have never seen the disease here, and I think a lot of practitioners can say the same thing, and for that reason a lot of Canadians probably think that polio is extinct. In fact, in third world countries, it is still a very big problem. I did a number of years ago practice in St. Lucia. Now, the south end of that island was immunized against polio, diphtheria, pertussis, and a number of other diseases many, many years previous to my being there, but the program had fallen into disuse, had disappeared. When I went down there, I was very startled one day to see a little girl coming in. Her 2 parents were literally dragging her along the floor, and I was stunned because here was an obvious polio, and I was even more stunned when it came to trying to treat this child, because I began to realize that even though our teaching said that these patients frequently got better, this little girl in fact did not respond to physiotherapy and the usual supportive care. And at the end of 3 months down there, I was still looking at a completely paralyzed little girl who could not walk. This really impressed upon me what a devastating disease this can be, and if time permits, I can mention what the experience has been in some other countries where there's been a devastation by big outbreaks.
Jim, could you tell us more about what are we doing in the Kootenays for Polio Plus?
Okay, one thing, if I could do first, Paul, is just maybe to help put this sort of thing in perspective for the people. When we're talking Polio Plus, as I say, there's a total of 6 vaccine-preventable diseases that we're addressing, polio being the primary one for Rotary that we're undertaking. But to put it in terms that people can relate to, a lot of people think that polio is gone. So much as you were saying, basically, Ken, in Canada, and in fact in North America, for some time now, polio has been all but eradicated. But it's still rampant in third world countries. To date, 50,000 children die every year, and 500,000 are crippled by polio alone. If we start looking at the 6 diseases that we're talking about in this total program, it's the equivalent to a 747 loaded with children, crashing with no survivors every hour on the hour for an entire year. 3.5 million children a year. And you start thinking in terms of small communities like Nelson and Castlegar and Trail. The total populations of the entire West Kootenays are a matter of a few hours of fatalities from things that we can prevent very simply. One of the crimes of it is that when we talk about polio vaccine, it takes 15 cents to save the life of a child. One of these 50,000 or 500,000 that are crippled every year, 15 cents worth of vaccine prevents that. And in this day and age, I think that it's come to a point, and certainly this has been Rotary's approach, that we have an obligation to help out, to maybe make a little payment back to society for our personal good fortunes so that we can help those less fortunate than ourselves. In terms of what's happening in the West Kootenays right now, the West Kootenays, the Rotary Clubs of the West Kootenays that I'm responsible for, which include Nelson, Beaver Valley, Trail, Rossland, Castlegar, Grand Forks, and the Cusp, have set a goal. First of all, Rotary International set a kind of a guideline goal for all clubs. And for these 7 clubs, it came to something in the neighborhood of $40,000 Canadian. The clubs looked at these, looked at ways we could raise money, and the actual goal that these clubs have set was $62,000. To date, some of the clubs have even surpassed their personal goals and are still going strong to raise additional funds, because the $120 million that I mentioned is a minimum amount that Rotary is looking to raise. It's going to take approximately $120 million to handle the polio aspect of this program, and anything that is over this, combined with the mechanism that we're setting up through our polio campaign, and these are such things as the cold chain that's necessary to transport these vaccines, the organization of volunteers, and the coordination with governments in many countries for their cooperation, that we're hoping that anything over the $120 million can go towards ending the other diseases by providing vaccine for those as well. What we are doing in the West Kootenays, first of all, before we go to the public, we're looking to Rotarians themselves to give, because this is a Rotary project, and as I mentioned, Rotary in its entire history has never gone outside of Rotary for straight donations. Certainly we've had many public fundraising projects. I'm sure many people that are watching this evening have been to Rotary Pancake Breakfast, or they've been to Rotary Casino Night, or one of many other projects that Rotary becomes involved in. We're looking, as I say, at Rotarians giving, and a major amount has been done. For example, in my home club, the club has, the members of the club have pledged or already donated something in the neighborhood of $8,000 Canadian before we've even left the club and started to go to the public. A couple of the projects that I've been involved in which affect the entire area, first was a Hawaiian raffle. It was a $5 raffle ticket. The winner receives a trip for 2 to Hawaii. We provided the airfare, the hotel, and $500 in spending money. We limited the tickets to 3,000, and the winner of our previous draw has just returned with an early spring tan. And we will be holding that again this year. It'll be held twice, so the second one will be coming up, and I hope people will watch for that. We've already had people inquiring as to when those tickets might be coming up. The other thing that we're involved in right now is a German jazz band concert. And what we have is we have a 23-member jazz band coming from Germany. Very unique situation. They have heard of the West Kootenays through the Rotary Student Exchange Program and wanted to come here badly enough that they contacted Rotary here and said, listen, if you will host us while we're here, put us up, and maybe tour us around and show us a bit of your countryside, we will travel at our own expense and we will put on some concerts for you, which we will not charge for. So we're going to be having 3 concerts here, one in Castlegar on April the 5th, one in Nelson on April the 7th, and one in Rossland on April the 8th. The cost for this will be $6. Now, if we were to pay a band like this to come into this area, we would be looking at probably double that price just to pay the band. As it is, all of the proceeds from this will be going to Rotary's Polio Plus program. Now, people can, if they wish, think of that $6 as a donation to an extremely worthwhile project. What it'll do is that $6 will immunize 40 children against polio. And that's quite a significant thing for a person to make a contribution like that. And what you're going to get, aside from the good feeling that I hope a person would have from making a contribution to this cause, is that you're going to hear a couple of hours of very fine music, the type which you would never normally get in this area. It's kind of a unique thing. You know, we've looked at culture events coming into this area before, and that's one of the things I find I miss from the big city, is the idea of not being able to get live plays and hear good music and good bands. So it is a rather special thing. I think it'd be worthwhile to Rotary, if Polio Plus wasn't going, simply to bring them here for the benefit of the people. This is the kind of things that Rotary's involved in. So we would look at bringing them in any case. It just happens that it ties very well with this program. I think perhaps Ken might mention a few things. You mentioned, Ken, about you had some personal experiences in treating.
Well, Jim, you mentioned the mortality that polio causes. We mustn't forget that there are, for every patient that dies with polio, there are many, many that suffer the ravages of the disease. I've heard about the tremendous number of children that have been suffering from the effects of polio in a country called Malawi. This is in southern Africa. Rotary has been involved in that country in trying to rehabilitate these children. Apparently the epidemics there have been so vast, so numerous, that there are a large number of children who are crippled, who have no way of mobilizing except by crawling around on the ground, and they are known as crawlers. To get these children mobilized, the Rotary has been involved in orthopedic work, in getting them fixed up with calipers, in many instances in having to amputate and to fix them up with artificial limbs. So you talk about the numerous deaths, but for every child that dies from polio, there are many, many others that are left with the terrible after effects. And of course, that little child that I treated, I felt very helpless leaving that child behind in a mission hospital where there was no orthopedic help for her, and she'd be limited to a life of crawling hopefully, until some orthopedic surgeon did get a chance to treat her in the future.
So the tragedy really is ongoing.
So the tragedy of the disease is more than just the mortality, but the after effects. And this, again, is something that we're tending to lose sight of because we don't see polio in this country.
Jim, do you have any closing comments?
Yeah, just one point I would like to make. Sometimes people have mentioned the idea about, you know, raising vast sums of money and taking them outside of the community. And one thing Rotary has tried to do and ensure in raising money for the Polio Plus project is that they take money that is separate from anything that we're currently doing. It is separate from all our current fundraising projects, from any other commitments that we previously had. It is from members, and it is from special things such as this Hawaiian raffle, which is new, and also this German jazz band. And I would hope that people in the audience would support us in attending this jazz band, because I think they'll have a very good evening's entertainment, and the money will certainly go for a worthy cause. If you wish tickets for this, anyone in the audience, if you wish tickets, you can contact any Rotarian if you know Rotarians, or soon there will be posters going up in Nelson, Castlegar, Trail, Beaver Valley, and Rossland, and they will have places where you'll be able to find these tickets and make them available. And I guess that pretty well is it for me. Thanks.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, ladies in the audience, gentlemen in the audience. Good night now.